Hello, BookTube. This is the Rambling Raconteur, Jack. I'm back. This is the New Year's book tag. As a new person to BookTube, I've sort of become the hapless child on the BookTube playground. I think I've been tagged by multiple people, at the very least, Jason Harrigan from Byways in Bookland, and Noah from Everybody Who Reads It Must Converse, who I believe Noah and I have had the same sort of idea of let's jump on in the new year in 2020 and have some fun. Uh, but anyways, I'm here. 6 questions, and let's see how the conversation goes. So the first question is the number of books I will read this year. I usually I don't set a formal goal for reading, but I usually, knowing from my past and my reading history, I'll read between 50 and 60 books this year. Maybe a few more, maybe a few less, but somewhere in that range. About a book a week, and then when I teach, so when I'm on breaks, I usually read just a little bit more frequently, and so that number gets up somewhere in the 50s, maybe 60 books. And then I also will read at least 50 unique children's books to my daughters. They each have books that they really enjoy reading. And so I will read, I keep a little log of what we read, but I'll read probably at least about 50 unique children's books to my two daughters. And so 50 to 60, I don't want to say actual books, but long form books, and then approximately 50 children's books. So question 2, 5 books that I did not get to in 2019, but that I would like to get to in 2020. So as I've watched a few videos from this tag this week, I see some people are like, well, I read this series, and I keep, I'm excited to read this series, and I'm going to read the whole series through. And I take a somewhat different approach to series of books or genres of books, and that will lead into the next question as well. I intentionally try not to read through an entire series, book after book after book after book. I know that my personality and the way my mind works, I'm one of those people who can fall into the Wikipedia wormhole and just disappear. Wanting more and more and more knowledge. I think it was Samuel Johnson who made a comment about how humans have such a desire to acquire more knowledge, we can just disappear into that. And I know my mind works that way. I realized that in college, where I would want to read all of the works by a single author, and I realized that kind of feeds into aspects of my personality or my mind that probably aren't the best aspects. And so I consciously try not to do that. I'll read a book within the series, but then I'll maybe wait an entire year to read the second book, or I'll wait a month to read the second book. I find that one of the things that helps me with is having that space means that my mind has to be able to remember what was going on within the series to pick back up within it. And I think it also just helps me be more well-rounded. I really consciously try not to read 2 books of the same genre back to back. Obviously that doesn't always happen, but I really do try to have a very well-rounded perspective with what I read. So 5 that I'll get to. One of the things I do is every year I try to make sure I dig into a number of works by different authors. Like I'll read at least one dialogue by Plato. I'll read at least one play by Shakespeare. One of the sort of subgenres I really try to make sure I read at least one modernist novel every year. This year, that'll probably be The Sleepwalkers by Herman Brock. It's a trilogy of novels sort of as one main book, The Sleepwalkers. I've read the first book within it, The Romantic. Up next is The Anarchist, and I'll probably be hitting that sometime in the next month. But I enjoy the modernists, and so I'll probably return to this one, and this will be at least one of those that I read this year. A second one, genre that I try to get into is I try to read at least one epic every year. So, and I generally think of like classical epics, like pre 1700. Epic. And so likely this year that's going to be The Metamorphoses by Ovid. I absolutely love Ovid. I've read his Amores are probably among my single favorite books of poetry, and so I'm excited to do The Metamorphoses. It may be. I've bizarrely found a copy of that sort of English transition language between Middle English and Elizabethan English that Mallory actually wrote in, and I have a copy of Le Morte d'Arthur in that sort of original late Middle English uh, that Mallory wrote it in. So I may be hitting that this year in addition to the Metamorphoses. But that'll be sort of my epic. And I realize Mallory's prose, but the way it reads, it feels like it's of another time and of that sort of classical epic. Within crime fiction, it will absolutely be GBH by Ted Lewis. Ted Lewis, of course, was the author of originally Jack's Return Home, but as a film it was Get Carter. He is a very influential British crime writer, even though he didn't write very many novels. And I received this for Christmas last year, and so I'm excited to tap into this year. And then in terms of nonfiction, likely the memoirs of the Duc de Saint-Simon. Not positive on that. I might just make it everybody's peeps, but we'll see. Likely the memoirs of the Duc de Saint-Simon. And then the fifth sort of type of book that I really look forward to reading each year is children's books now that I'm a parent. And so I believe this year two of the books we'll be reading will be the D'Alier's Myths. And so I've got the Norse Gods and Giants. This is an old hardback, very, very old. I had it when it was already old when I was a child, 30 years ago. And so I'll be reading this with my daughters this year, and I think they'll enjoy it. I certainly did. It was certainly a formative influence on my reading. So those are five that I'll plan to read this year. A genre I'll read more of, I honestly don't know. There might be I really consciously try to read within every genre, even romance. I live in the southwestern U.S., so even westerns. So I don't know that there will be a genre I read more of. We'll see. I can't make any goals around that. I feel like that's a goal from my past reading. And three goals that I have for this year that aren't book related. Well, that's absolutely valid. I think this is probably the part of the tag that I've enjoyed most from other people's videos. So the first goal that I have is my daughters are now 3.5. One will turn 4, and the younger one is going to turn 2 in about a month. So they're able to be more and more active. And so one of my goals is to make sure that we're continuing to be active, even as they're getting older. My wife and I really enjoy taking them out hiking, out to parks. I've even found a tiny local park where my older daughter and I can kind of maybe go running some this year. So really continuing to be active and sort of active time with my family. I think that's an important part of all of our development. The second goal I have is I try every year to go to, well, not every year, but past few years I've sort of had a goal of getting to a national park in the U.S. that I've never visited before. And I'm fortunate, I live in Arizona, so I'm able to it's conceivable for me to be able to do a long weekend or a break trip to southern Utah, New Mexico, California, and then obviously the national parks within Arizona or even southern Colorado. And so I would like to go to one. I don't really have a goal around which one I'd like to go to. This past year I was fortunate enough to go to the Sequoia National Park in Kings Canyon in California and see the giant redwoods for the first time. And I also made it to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for the first time. And those were just astonishing experiences. And so I'm hoping to do that. I don't have a formal plan yet to make that happen, but it's something I'm hoping to do. And then the third goal is sort of professional. So I work with, I'm a teacher. I teach math and science, more recently mathematics. And so I work with a school that is an alternative school, so students who have not always historically been successful, but are often very bright, and uh, that school is developing and growing, and sort of the goal is to make it a model alternative school for what do you do with people who with students when they reach the age of 15, 16, and they haven't been successful. That shouldn't shut a door on their futures in my mind, and many of the people I work with, not in their minds. And so I'm fortunate to work with a district and an administrative team that really believe that every student deserves an opportunity. I think back to who I was at 15, 16, and even 18, 19. And I wasn't certainly, I'm not perfect now, but I was certainly less perfect then. And my judgment making was much less perfect too. And so I think the more we provide opportunities to everyone, and the more we give people a chance to make their best decisions at ages when they can make their best decisions, then I think we have a better society. So that professional goal is really to make sure that school continues to evolve and grow, and ultimately, in my mind, become a model sort of alternative education environment. Um, so those are the three goals. One book that I haven't read in a long, long time, or I've had for a long time but haven't read, and I may this year, we'll see, is Foucault's Pendulum by Umberto Eco. I read The Name of the Rose when I was in college and absolutely loved it. I thought it was a masterpiece. I reread it a couple of years later in college and was even more impressed. And I've returned to it probably twice since then. And I think I'm in the mood this year in 2020 to take a dive into Foucault's Pendulum and just the Umberto Eco has one of those galaxy minds where everything's connected, and I love those types of minds. I love to dip into that galaxy and just rocket from star to star and try to keep up. That's some of my favorite reading experiences. So that may be what I go for in 2020. We'll see. And then finally, a word for 2020. And I've seen a lot of people have just so many great ideas. I think one of the things, part of the reason I was happy to make a channel and join the BookTube community in 2020 was it seems like there are so many kind and good people who are making videos and reading and sharing their reading thoughts from a very human perspective, which I think is fantastic. And I think I don't want to steal anybody's words, so I think the word I'm going to go with is thoughtful. And the reason I say thoughtful is I think when we take actions and make decisions and interact with others, and we do it with thought, when we do it with not just thinking with our minds, but thinking with our hearts, thinking with our whole person, I think when we make decisions and think that way, truly think with our whole persons, we are better for it, and those we interact with are better for it. And I believe that if we are all doing that, then the society we have, the local society, but the national society and the global society that we have, becomes a better place when we are approaching not just with our minds, but with our hearts, and really with developed minds and developed hearts, with intelligence and wisdom and empathy. And it's something I strive for, and I can see so many others who strive for it. And so that's what I continue to desire and be a part of. In terms of, now to close out, in terms of tagging others, like I said, I think I'm the whipping boy of the BookTube playground. I think I might have been the only person who hadn't been tagged. So I guess what I'll do is toss it out and tag anybody who's listening who doesn't have a channel, and you're thinking, should I do this? Just join in. It's very fun. So that's who I'll tag. Thank you, BookTube.